You don't wake up one day and decide to stop caring. It happens slowly, piece by piece, after too many apologies you didn't owe, after too many chances that were never appreciated, after carrying people who never once asked how heavy it was for you. That's when something inside you changes. The empathy stays, but the access ends. You no longer rush to fix, to explain, or to make peace with people who thrive on your compassion. When you stop caring, you don't turn cold. You turn wise. You start protecting the same energy you used to give away so freely. And the people who once depended on your kindness begin to panic because they realize your care wasn't weakness, it was power. And now, that power belongs to you. This video will help you understand what truly happens when an empath stops caring and how that moment changes everything. Subscribe to Brainy Empath, like this video, and comment, "My empathy now protects me." Because when you stop caring about the wrong people, you finally start caring for the right one, yourself. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen. At some point, you get tired of trying to make people understand you. You've spent so much time explaining your intentions, clarifying your emotions, and justifying your reactions, only to realize they were never really listening. They weren't trying to understand you, they were trying to control the narrative. Every time you opened your heart, they twisted your words, made you question your truth, and used your empathy against you. And that's the breaking point for an empath. When you finally see that your explanations don't create peace, they just feed someone else's comfort while draining yours. So you stop, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. You learn that you don't need to defend your feelings to people committed to misunderstanding them. You start realizing that those who truly care about you won't need paragraphs of explanation to see your heart. They'll already feel it. The ones who want to twist your words will do it no matter how carefully you speak. And that's when silence becomes your protection. You stop talking to be understood and start observing who deserves your words in the first place. It's a quiet shift, but it changes everything. You no longer chase closure. You no longer overthink what you could have said differently. You let people believe whatever helps them sleep at night because you finally understand that your peace isn't found in proving your truth, it's found in living it. You don't need validation to confirm your empathy. You just need alignment with people who value it. And the irony is, when you stop explaining yourself, your energy changes. You feel lighter, calmer, more grounded. The people who used to manipulate your kindness begin to lose their power. You realize that silence isn't weakness, it's emotional maturity. It's what happens when you finally outgrow the need to be understood by people who were never capable of seeing you in the first place. You recognize who drains you and who refuels you. For most of your life, you probably gave without keeping track. You poured your time, your patience, and your energy into people simply because you cared, because that's what empaths do. You believed that love meant giving endlessly even when no one gave back. But over time, something changes. The exhaustion starts to feel heavier than the gratitude. You notice that after certain conversations, you feel empty, tense, or mentally foggy. And after others, you feel lighter, like your soul just exhaled. That's when your sensitivity starts turning into self-awareness. You finally start noticing the difference between people who feed your spirit and people who feed on it. This realization doesn't come easily. It's painful to admit that some of the people you love the most are also the ones who drain you. You try to convince yourself they'll change, that they don't mean to take so much from you, but deep down you start to see the truth. Their comfort often depends on your sacrifice. They don't want your healing, they want your energy. And no matter how much you give, it's never enough. That's when you start choosing differently. You begin to protect your energy like it's sacred because it is. You stop overextending yourself just to keep people close. You stop saying yes when your body is begging you to say no. You start listening to that subtle feeling in your chest that tells you when someone's presence feels heavy instead of peaceful. You no longer feel guilty for pulling away, you feel relieved. And something beautiful happens when you do. The people who truly care about you start to stand out. You recognize those who refuel you, the ones who bring calm instead of chaos, who listen without taking, who see your empathy not as a tool but as a gift. You start realizing that love should restore you, not exhaust you. This is how you reclaim your power. You stop chasing approval from those who drain you and start nurturing connections that refill your soul. Because once you learn to tell the difference between energy that feeds you and energy that bleeds you, your entire world begins to heal. You detach from the need to fix everyone. One of the hardest lessons for an empath to learn is that not everyone wants to be healed. You've spent years trying to save people, believing that your understanding, your love, or your patience could somehow reach the parts of them they refuse to face. You've stayed up late, listening to their pain, excusing their behavior, and convincing yourself that if you just cared enough, they'd finally change. But eventually, exhaustion replaces hope. You start to see the pattern. They don't actually want help. They want comfort without accountability, healing without effort. And that's when you realize it's not your job to fix everyone. Detaching from the savior role isn't coldness, it's clarity. You begin to see that your empathy doesn't have to be a rescue mission. You're not obligated to carry the weight of other people's choices or heal wounds they refuse to acknowledge. You can care deeply and still walk away. You can wish someone peace and still protect your own. That's real compassion, not enabling, but understanding when to let go. When you stop trying to fix people, you take your power back. You stop confusing emotional labor with love. You stop investing in potential and start paying attention to patterns. You realize that some people aren't stuck because no one helped them. They're stuck because it's safer to stay broken than to take responsibility. And your constant rescuing only keeps them comfortable in their chaos. So you let go, not with anger, but with acceptance. You stop showing up where your help is used, not appreciated. You stop draining yourself for people who only show up when they need saving. You finally understand that your empathy isn't supposed to be a lifeline for others. It's supposed to guide you toward peace, growth, and genuine connection. Because once you detach from the need to fix everyone, you discover something powerful. Not everyone deserves your healing energy, and you don't need to feel guilty for choosing yourself. You can still be kind without being consumed. You can still love without losing yourself. And that's when your empathy evolves from something that depletes you into something that protects you. You redefine compassion as boundaries. For most of your life, you probably believed that caring meant giving everything, your time, your energy, your patience, even when it hurt. You thought love meant being endlessly available, forgiving, and understanding. You confused compassion with self-sacrifice because that's what people taught you, that being good meant never saying no. But over time, that belief starts to break you. You realize that every time you say yes when your heart is screaming no, you lose a piece of yourself. You start to understand that unconditional giving doesn't make you kind, it makes you empty. This is when everything shifts. You begin to see that real compassion includes you too. You learn that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. You stop letting people drain you in the name of love. You stop apologizing for needing rest, silence, or distance. You start saying no, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because you finally understand that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, they're filters that keep your energy safe. At first, it feels strange. You feel guilty for putting yourself first. You worry that saying no makes you cold. But slowly, you begin to feel the difference. You notice how your mind quiets down when you stop overcommitting. You notice how your body feels lighter when you stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. You begin to see that the people who genuinely love you don't get offended by your boundaries. They respect them. It's only the ones who benefited from your lack of boundaries who make you feel guilty for having them. Redefining compassion means realizing that love without limits isn't love, it's dependency. You can't heal anyone by breaking yourself apart. You can't pour from an empty cup. The most powerful thing you can do for others is to stay whole, to give from a place of peace instead of exhaustion. So you start giving differently. You give with intention. You give with awareness. You give without betraying yourself in the process. Because the empath who learns to say no doesn't become less compassionate. They become unstoppable. You accept that not everyone deserves access to your energy. Empaths are wired to connect deeply, to feel, to understand, to give. You've probably spent most of your life offering pieces of yourself to people who never earned them. You've given time to those who only took advantage of your availability, love to those who mistook it for weakness, and second chances to people who saw your forgiveness as permission. But when you finally stop caring the way you used to, something inside you clicks. Your energy isn't limitless, and it's not for everyone. You begin to see your energy for what it truly is, sacred. It's the most valuable thing you have, and not everyone is meant to have access to it. You start realizing that some people were only meant to cross your path, not stay in your life. They were lessons, not lifelines. You stop letting temporary people leave permanent marks. The old version of you gave everyone an open door. The new version of you locks it and only opens it for those who bring peace, not chaos. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care smarter. You stop chasing after people who ghost you. You stop explaining your worth to those who question it. And you stop showing up for people who never show up for you. You start paying attention to how you feel after spending time with someone, drained or restored, and you let that guide your decisions. Your empathy becomes selective, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. And as you protect your energy, your world begins to shift. The noise fades, your emotions stabilize, and your intuition becomes stronger. You start attracting people who match your frequency instead of draining it. The ones who truly value you don't demand constant giving. They give back. They meet you with presence, not need. Accepting that not everyone deserves access to your energy is one of the most powerful awakenings for an empath. It's the moment you realize your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. You no longer overextend to prove your heart. You know your worth and you guard it quietly. Because the truth is, not everyone deserves your kindness, especially the ones who confuse it for weakness. You grow comfortable with silence. For most empaths, silence used to feel unbearable. It felt like distance, rejection, or punishment. You'd do anything to fill the quiet, send one more message, explain one more time, try to fix what felt broken. The noise was painful, but the silence was worse. It made you feel invisible, unwanted, or guilty for things you didn't cause. But over time, after being drained and dismissed too many times, something changes inside you. You stop needing to fill the silence and you start embracing it. The quiet that once felt like loss begins to feel like freedom. No arguments, no overthinking, no emotional games, just peace. You start realizing that not every story needs closure. Not every person deserves an explanation, and not every situation needs your energy. You learn that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means control. It's the space where you finally hear your own thoughts again after years of drowning in everyone else's noise. At first, the silence feels uncomfortable. Your mind still searches for answers, still wants to understand, but then you notice something. The longer you stay quiet, the lighter you feel. The people who used to thrive on your emotional reactions lose their power. The situations that once triggered you stop having an effect, and slowly, you start to realize that silence is not emptiness, it's healing in its purest form. You begin to use silence differently now. You use it to observe instead of react, to protect instead of explain. You don't chase understanding, you let the truth reveal itself in time. And it always does. The people who were real never left, and the ones who did were never truly with you. That realization brings peace deeper than words ever could. Growing comfortable with silence is the moment your empathy matures. You stop pouring it into noise and start channeling it inward, toward clarity, calm, and strength. Because silence isn't the absence of care, it's the evidence of healing. And once you learn to be at peace in the quiet, nothing and no one can disturb your spirit again. You transform emotional pain into clarity. There was a time when emotional pain left you confused, when every heartbreak, disappointment, and betrayal made you question your worth. As an empath, you felt everything too deeply. You carried other people's burdens, absorbed their sadness, and mistook their chaos for connection. You didn't realize that pain was teaching you something, not about them, but about yourself. And when you finally stop caring the same way, that pain starts to transform into something far more powerful. Clarity. You begin to see the patterns. You recognize the signs you used to ignore, the way people drained you, the way you tried to fix what was never yours to heal. You start noticing how your kindness was used as a doorway for manipulation, and how your silence was mistaken for consent. Instead of letting that realization break you, it opens your eyes. You stop over-feeling for others and start deeply understanding yourself. The exhaustion that once made you feel powerless now becomes your teacher. You realize that every emotional wound carried a message a reminder of where your boundaries were missing, where your self-worth was hiding, and where your intuition was being silenced. You start listening to your pain differently. Instead of asking, why did they hurt me? You begin asking, what is this trying to show me? That's when everything changes. This clarity doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. You stop trying to rescue everyone and start rescuing your peace. You no longer confuse attachment with love or chaos with passion. You begin to see that not everyone deserves your softness and that empathy without wisdom becomes self-destruction. Through pain, you discover perspective. You realize that your emotions aren't weaknesses, they're data. They tell you when something's off, when something's right, and when it's time to walk away. That awareness becomes your strength. Because once an empath learns to turn pain into clarity, they stop being easy to manipulate. They stop repeating cycles. And for the first time, they stop being lost in others and finally come home to themselves. You choose peace over connection. There comes a point when you stop chasing connection just for the sake of not being alone. You've spent years trying to be understood, explaining your intentions, softening your truth, and holding space for people who never held space for you. Every time, you left the conversation more drained, more confused, and more distant from yourself. But now, you finally understand something powerful. Peace is worth more than connection that costs your sanity. You stop showing up where your presence feels heavy. You stop trying to prove your loyalty to people who only saw your empathy as convenience. You no longer confuse being liked with being valued. Instead, you start protecting your calm like it's sacred. You realize that silence, solitude, and boundaries aren't signs of isolation. They're signs of emotional maturity. For the first time, solitude feels like a home you chose, not a punishment you endured. You no longer beg to be understood in places where you're only misunderstood. You stop explaining your kindness to people committed to misreading it. The arguments you once couldn't walk away from now feel beneath you. You don't react, you release. You don't chase, you detach. Peace becomes your filter for everything. If it costs your inner calm, it's not worth it. This shift changes everything. You start attracting people who feel like quiet, not chaos. People who respect energy, not just emotion. The relationships that survive this new version of you are the ones built on respect, not dependency. You learn that it's better to be alone in peace than surrounded by noise that kills your spirit. Choosing peace over connection doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've started caring correctly. You understand that not every connection is meant to be kept and not every bond deserves your effort. Because when peace becomes your priority, your heart finally starts to rest. And that's when your empathy evolves into wisdom, calm, grounded, and completely untouchable. When an empath finally stops caring, it's not coldness, it's evolution. You've spent years giving, healing, and holding space for everyone but yourself. Now you understand that real compassion includes you too. You no longer chase closure, fight for understanding, or explain your worth to people who were never listening. Instead, you protect your peace, honor your energy, and let silence speak for you. This version of you doesn't beg to be seen. You choose who gets to see you. You don't pour endlessly into others, you pour intentionally. And for the first time, you feel grounded, not guilty for putting yourself first. That's what emotional maturity looks like. It's not about caring less, it's about caring smarter. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to Brainy Empath for more videos that speak to your strength, your healing, and your quiet transformation. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and remember, the moment you stop caring the wrong way, you finally start living the right way.